The wind screamed like a wild beast across the icy plains of Glycera, tearing through the sky with frozen claws. Zeka wrapped her thin, cracked arms around her daughter, Lyru, trying to block the cold with her own body. The storm had come early this year, angrier, louder, and crueler than before. Her fur cloak was torn, her boots soaked, and the small alien child shivered so hard it hurt Zeka's heart to hear. She looked behind them. No sign of shelter, no sign of help, only white death and endless snow. The village had closed its doors to them long ago. Cursed, they had whispered. She brings bad luck, and her child is marked. Zeka never believed in curses, until her mate died, until the crops failed, until the cold wouldn't leave them alone. Now no one opened their doors, not even for a child. A loud crack split the air, a tree frozen solid snapping in half and crashing nearby. Lyru cried out, "Mama, I'm scared." Zeka kissed her forehead, though her lips were bleeding from the wind. "Shh, little one, Mama's here. Mama's not giving up." But she was lying. Her legs were shaking, her arms weak, her body near frozen, and Lyru's skin was turning a strange blue. Zeka knew what that meant. Frost was creeping in, slow and silent like death. She looked up at the sky, snow falling in wild spirals, and whispered, "Please, someone, anyone." No one ever came for the broken, the banished, or the cursed. Until today, a sharp mechanical growl echoed through the storm. Zeka's ears twitched, her heart skipped, and her arms tightened around Lyru. Out of the white blur, a shadow appeared, tall, broad, moving fast with glowing blue eyes and metal wrapped over its body. She gasped, thinking it was a snow beast, until it spoke. "Are you alive?" The voice was deep, human, and kind. Zeka blinked, her vision blurry. A human on Glycera in this storm? He kneeled. Hid beside them. Steam rose from his armored suit, and a warm light shone from a device on his chest. "Don't move," he said. "I've got you." She opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came out. He gently took Lyru from her arms and wrapped her in his thick coat, then reached for Zeka. She flinched, but he paused, speaking softly. "It's okay. I'm here to help." No one had ever said that to her, not in years. She didn't know why she let him pick her up, why she trusted his eyes. Maybe it was the way he didn't hesitate, or the way he looked at her child, not with disgust, but with worry. The wind howled louder as he carried them both toward a strange machine in the snow, hovering, glowing, humming with energy. It was unlike anything she had seen before. Inside, it was warm, truly warm. He laid Lyru down, covered her with blankets and checked her pulse. Then he turned to Zeka. "Your lips are blue. You're freezing. Drink this." He handed her a silver flask. The drink burned, but warmth spread through her chest like fire. "I'm Ethan," he said. "I'm from Earth." Zeka stared at him, still unsure if he was real. The human looked around the storm and muttered, "No one should be out in this." He sat down beside her and spoke in a calm voice. "Don't worry. You're safe now." Zeka stared at her daughter, curled up and no longer shaking. Safe. It was a word she had forgotten, and for the first time in years, she let her eyes close and allowed herself to believe. Zeka woke slowly, warmth touching her skin like a dream she didn't want to lose. The cold was gone, the pain softer, her fingers no longer stiff like ice. She blinked her red eyes open and looked around. She wasn't outside anymore. She was lying on a soft bed inside a metal cabin, walls humming quietly, faint lights glowing with a golden hue. Beside her, little Lyru slept peacefully, her tiny hands holding a blanket too big for her. Zeka's heart jumped with relief. She was alive, and so was her child. Then, she remembered him, the human. He had appeared from the storm like a spirit, lifted them both like feathers, and spoke with calm fire. Zeka sat up slowly and looked toward the far corner of the room. He was there, sitting on a metal box, sharpening a blade with smooth strokes. His brown hair was messy from the wind, his skin marked with old burns, and his black armor was still dusted with snow, but his eyes, green and strange, were focused and kind. He noticed her awake and stood immediately, putting the blade down. "You're awake," he said gently. "That's good." Zeka didn't speak, just stared. her voice still unsure if it was safe. He picked up a bowl from a heated tray and brought it over, placing it in her hands. "Soup," he said. "I made it with ration packs and some roots I found nearby. It's not great, but it's hot." Zeka looked at the food, then at him, then back again. No one had made her food in years. No one had ever served her with quiet kindness like this. She took a small sip. It was bitter and strange, but warm. It warmed more than her stomach. It warmed her heart. "I'm Ethan," he said softly, crouching beside the bed. "Earth Explorer crashed here 3 months ago. Been surviving alone." Zeka's voice finally came out weak and cracking. Why help us?" Ethan tilted his head. "Why not?" Her eyes narrowed. "Because no one else ever did." He gave a sad smile. "Maybe that's the problem with your people. Too many forgot how to care." Zeka looked away, ashamed and confused. She wasn't used to this compassion. She was used to insults, closed doors, and spit in the snow. Ethan stood up and walked toward the back of the room where glowing panels showed weather data, maps, and solar readings. "The storm's still growing," he said. "Another 4 days at least. You'll stay here until it's gone." Zeka clenched the blanket tighter around her. What do you want in return?" Ethan turned, surprised by the question. "Nothing," he said firmly. "You're a mother protecting her child. That's reason enough." Zeka stared at him for a long time, unsure if she could trust that answer. Where she came from, no one did anything without a price. Then Lyru stirred, her eyes fluttering open. She looked around, then saw the human and pulled the blanket up shyly. Ethan smiled gently and waved, "Hey, little one, you're safe." Lyru didn't speak, but she stared at him curiously, as if wondering if he was real. Zeka held her daughter close and whispered in their native tongue, "It's okay, love. The storm can't reach us here." Ethan turned away to give them space, but not before Zeka noticed the deep scar running down his back as he adjusted his gear. He had seen pain too. Maybe more than she realized, but he hadn't turned cold from it. He had become something else, warm. The storm roared outside like a wild beast trying to break in, but inside the metal cabin, there was calm. Ethan moved carefully around the small space, checking systems, adjusting heaters, and sealing tiny air leaks with gel patches. Zeka sat near the edge of the bed, her child curled beside her under soft thermal covers. She couldn't stop watching him. He wasn't like the others, loud, cruel, full of pride. He was quiet, focused, always doing something helpful. The cabin wasn't fancy, but it felt like a palace compared to the freezing caves and empty homes she had begged in before. Ethan's hands were rough, but his movements were gentle. Zeka's eyes landed on a torn photo stuck to one panel. 3 smiling humans, a woman, a man, and a child with wild curly hair. She pointed at it. "Your family?" Ethan paused for a second, his eyes darkened. "They were," he said softly, "before the war." Zeka didn't ask more. She understood the silence that follows loss. Outside, snow slammed against the window, but inside she watched as Ethan cooked again, this time something that smelled almost sweet. He placed a bowl near Lyru, careful not to wake her, and then looked at Zeka. "How old is she?" 5 seasons, Zeka said quietly. "She hasn't eaten warm food in 2. Ethan nodded slowly. He didn't ask why. Instead, he turned a heating panel toward them and said, "Let her rest. The warmth will hold." Zeka hesitated, then stood up and moved to the other side of the room, closer to him, her hands folded tightly. "I don't understand you," she said. "You could have passed us by. You don't know us. Why stop?" Ethan gave a soft smile and replied, "Because I've been left in the cold before. I know how it feels." She stared at him, unsure what to say. Outside, the mountain winds howled louder, shaking the cabin slightly. Zeka tensed. "Is it safe?" Ethan nodded. This shelter was built for crashes and storms. Steel walls, energy core, heat from below. He opened a hatch in the floor, revealing a soft glow and humming generator. "Earth tech," he explained, "built to last." Zeka crouched beside it, amazed. Her people barely had firestones and hand warmers. This human had a sun beneath his floor. "You live here, alone?" she asked, voice softer. Ethan looked around and sighed. 3 months now. "No one came for you?" He shook his head. "Transmission failed. Rescue team probably thinks I'm dead." Zeka looked down, her hands clenching. I know that feeling. They sat in silence for a while, only the wind outside and the soft hum of machines between them. Liru stirred, then sat up slowly. Her eyes were clearer now. Her small voice whispered, "Mama, I'm not cold." Zeka rushed to her, tears stinging her eyes. "You're okay, my little star, you're okay." Ethan stayed back, giving them space, his eyes gentle. When Liru looked up and saw him, she tilted her head and asked, "Are you magic?" Ethan chuckled, shaking his head. "No, little one, just human." Zeka looked at him with new eyes then, not a beast, not a monster, not even a warrior, but a miracle. Zeka stared at the soft light glowing from the cabin walls, but her mind was far away. Liru was finally sleeping without shaking, her tiny body wrapped safely under layers of warmth. Ethan was fixing something again, always moving, always repairing, while quiet music from his old Earth device played in the background. But Zeka wasn't listening to the music. Her thoughts were in the past, in the village she once called home. Back then, her hands were not cracked, her body not thin, her heart not so tired. She had been loved, once, before Liru was born, before her mate fell into the crevasse during the great hunt, before the elders whispered that the child had brought misfortune. The first time she asked for help, they looked away. The second time, they shut their doors. By the third time, her sister stood on the porch and said, "Don't come again, Zeka. You bring the cold with you." Zeka had held her newborn close that night, walking into the dark, hiding in empty caves, stealing frozen roots when no one watched. The snow didn't feel as cruel as the people. The storm never lied to her face. She didn't remember how many nights she cried herself to sleep without making a sound. She had no right to weep when her child needed her awake. And now, a stranger from another planet had done more for her in one day than her own blood did in years. She stood quietly and walked toward the corner where Ethan was working on a small heater coil. "I want to ask something," she said, voice flat but steady. He looked up and nodded. "Go ahead." "If my child had frozen out there, would you still have saved me?" Ethan frowned slightly, confused by the question. "Yes," he said simply. "Both of you mattered." Zeka looked away, swallowing hard. "Where I come from, only the strong matter. Only the ones who can give something." Ethan leaned back against the wall. "Oh, that's a cold way to live," she nodded slowly. "Colder than this storm." He didn't speak, letting the silence stretch, letting her say what she needed. "My daughter was born under a red moon," she continued. "The village elders said it was bad luck. They said her eyes were too sharp, her voice too quiet, her spirit too wild." Ethan glanced toward Liru, who murmured in her sleep, hugging the blanket tight. "She seems perfect to me," he said softly. Zeka's voice cracked as she replied, "She is, but no one saw that." Ethan picked up a thermal core and set it beside her. "Sometimes, you only need one person to see it." Zeka sat down on the cold floor, curling her arms around her knees, her voice quieter now. "She asked me last month if we were bad, if the cold hated us because we were wrong." Ethan's jaw clenched. She shouldn't be asking questions like that. She should be playing, laughing, not surviving. Zeka nodded, eyes glistening. "I tried to protect her, but I couldn't give her what she needed." Ethan said nothing at first, then added gently, "You did. You gave her you, and that kept her alive." Zeka blinked, stunned by the words. No one had ever told her she was enough. Not until now. She stared at the human across from her and realized, he didn't just fix broken tech, he fixed broken hope too. The wind outside had started to quiet, but Zeka felt a strange pressure in the air. Something wasn't right. She stood near the edge of the cabin window, staring into the white mist that covered the mountain slope. Liru was drawing on the metal floor with a dull rock, humming a soft tune Ethan taught her. Ethan was in the back room, checking his solar panels and rations. Zeka's sharp ears twitched. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Not wind, not snow. Footsteps. She pressed her face against the icy glass and saw them. Dark figures moving between the trees. 4, maybe 5, with weapons strapped to their backs and masks covering their faces. Mountain scavengers, bandits, the kind who stole from crash sites and raided lost camps. Her breath caught. "Ethan," she called, panic in her voice. "We're not alone." Ethan was by her side in seconds, blaster in one hand, coat half-zipped. He glanced out the window and cursed under his breath. "Bandits!" Zeka pulled Lyru behind her, her hands shaking. "Will the cabin hold?" "Depends on what they want," Ethan said, voice calm but tight. "Stay with her. Don't come out." He walked to the door and activated a security lock. A thick steel panel slid across it with a mechanical hiss. Then he pulled a second weapon from a wall compartment and crouched near the window. Outside, the figures came closer, laughing now, one shouting, "We saw the smoke! Open up, and we won't burn it down." Ethan didn't answer. Zeka stood frozen, her arms around Lyru, her heart beating like a drum. Another voice yelled, "We know someone's in there. Don't make us break the walls." Ethan moved to the panel and whispered, "Zeka, go into the back room. There's a shield door. Lock it. Don't open it unless it's me." She shook her head. "I won't leave you alone." "You need to protect your daughter," he said firmly, eyes steady. "Let me protect you." Her lips trembled, but she obeyed, pulling Lyru into the back and sealing the shield with a soft hum. From inside, she held her daughter tight, pressing her ear to the wall. Then, bang! The first hit shook the door, a second blow, louder, followed by sparks and curses. "Let us in, human," someone growled. "We'll make it quick." Ethan's voice echoed like steel. "You try, and I'll make sure none of you walk away." A pause, then a sudden flash of light. Boom! A blaster fired, glass shattered, metal rang loud. Zeka covered Lyru's ears, her own breath trapped in her chest. Then she heard Ethan yell, then another blast, and a scream, more shouting outside. One of the bandits cursed in pain. "He hit Mars! He fragging hit him!" Another blast. Then silence. For a long moment all she heard was the wind again, and her own heart pounding. Then, footsteps, slow and heavy. The shield door slid open, and Ethan stood there, face scratched, shirt torn, holding a bent metal pipe in one hand. Zeka gasped, rushing to him. "You're bleeding!" He nodded, smiling weakly. "Only a little." "What happened to them?" she whispered. "They ran," he said simply. "They always do when someone fights back." Zeka looked at his wounds, at the small cuts across his cheek, the blood on his arm. He had faced 5 armed strangers for them. No one had ever fought for her, not even her own kin. Ethan knelt to Lyru's level, wiped a tear from her cheek, and smiled. "Told you I'd keep you safe." Lyru hugged him tightly without saying a word. And Zeka? She felt something shift deep inside her, a crack in the wall she had built, and through it, warmth began to shine. Ethan sat quietly on the edge of the metal bed, shirt half torn, blood slowly dripping down his arm. Zeka moved quickly, gathering clean cloths and heating water on a small stove, her hands shaking not from fear, but worry. "You should lie down," she said firmly, her voice no longer soft and unsure. "You lost blood." Ethan chuckled faintly, wincing as he tried to move his shoulder. "I've had worse. Once got hit by space shrapnel in the chest. Still cooked dinner that night." Zeka frowned. "That's not funny." But inside, she felt something strange, something warm. He was still joking, even now, even bleeding. He watched her kneel beside him and gently pull his arm forward, cleaning the wound with steady hands. "You didn't have to fight for us," she whispered, dipping the cloth again. "You could have let them take what they wanted." Ethan looked down at her, his voice calm. "Then what kind of man would I be?" Zeka didn't answer. She focused on wrapping the bandage carefully, her fingers brushing his skin. His body was warm, strong, scarred in many places, signs of a life filled with battle and survival. But his eyes were different. They were soft when they looked at her, not full of pity, full of quiet respect. "Where did you learn to fight like that?" she asked, taping the cloth in place. "Earth military," he said. "I left after the war. Got tired of watching people hurt each other for nothing." She glanced up at him. "Then why come to space?" He smiled, a sad kind of smile. "I thought maybe out here I'd find something better, something worth protecting." Zeka froze for a second, her breath catching. He didn't say someone, but the word hung heavy in the air. She pulled back slowly and stood, looking at Lyru, who was curled up near the heater, her face peaceful at last. She used to cry in her sleep, Zeka said softly. She'd dream of the cold, of people closing doors, of being hungry. Ethan followed her gaze. She's strong, he said, but no child should have to be strong like that. Zeka sat beside him on the edge of the bed, her voice low. I failed her. I couldn't give her a home. I couldn't give her safety. Ethan turned to her, his voice gentle. You gave her your arms, your warmth, your love. That's what kept her breathing. Zeka looked at him, her eyes stinging. You talk like you understand. He nodded slowly. Because I do. And then, for the first time, Ethan told her about the night he lost his family, when the fire rained from the sky, when he ran toward his house, only to find rubble and silence, about how he screamed until his voice broke, and how no one came to hold him. Zeka listened in silence, tears rolling down her cheeks, not for herself, but for him. When he finished, he simply said, That's why I couldn't leave you two out there. No one should face the cold alone. She leaned forward slowly and touched his bandaged hand. He didn't pull away. In that moment, nothing needed to be said. Not about the past, not about promises, just two broken souls warming each other in a cabin on a frozen world. Outside, the storm still raged, but inside, something much stronger had begun to grow, a bond not of blood or duty, but of quiet, stubborn hope. Days passed quietly in the shelter, but not without change. The storm outside no longer felt like a threat, just background noise to something warmer growing inside. Ethan was healing. Zeka was breathing deeper, and Lyru, she had begun to laugh, not just smile, laugh. It was the soft giggle of a child who felt safe again. That morning, the three of them sat on the floor near the heat panel, eating strange, chewy cubes from Earth rations. Zeka had wrinkled her nose at the taste, and Ethan had joked, That's the price of Earth technology. Lyru had stuck out her tongue playfully, and Ethan had made a face back, pretending to fall over as if poisoned. Zeka watched the two of them play, her heart confused and full. She had never imagined this kind of peace was possible. Not in a metal shelter, not after everything she'd lost. Later that evening, Ethan worked on repairing an old satellite dish outside, while Zeka helped Lyru take a warm bath in a small water pod. For the first time in years, her daughter's skin wasn't blue from cold. Do you like it here, little one? Zeka asked softly, drying her gently. Lyru nodded. It's warm, and Ethan is funny. He makes the walls not scary. Zeka smiled, then froze. Do you like Ethan? Lyru blinked, then whispered, Can we stay here? With him? Can he be our forever? Zeka didn't answer right away. She couldn't. That night, Lyru fell asleep fast, tucked between the blankets with her tiny drawing tools under her pillow. Ethan sat near the heater again, sipping something hot and staring at the firelight bouncing off the walls. Zeka approached slowly, carrying a folded piece of cloth. I washed this, she said, handing him his torn jacket, now stitched and clean. Ethan looked at the mended lines and smiled. You didn't have to. I wanted to, she replied, sitting beside him. They both stared at the heater glow. Out for a while, neither one speaking. Then Zeka asked softly, Do you ever miss Earth? Ethan took a breath. Every day. But lately, I don't feel as alone. Zeka turned to him, her voice lower now. Because of us? He nodded. Because of you. Silence again, but this time, it wasn't empty. It was full of unsaid things. Lyru suddenly murmured something in her sleep, then sat up and looked at them groggily. Where's Papa? She asked, rubbing her eyes. Zeka blinked, stunned. Papa? Lyru pointed at Ethan without thinking. Him. Papa Ethan. Ethan froze, eyes wide. Zeka watched his face. Not anger, not fear, just surprise. And then she smiled, small but real. She's never called anyone that before, she whispered. Not even her real father. Ethan turned to Lyru and gently tucked the blanket around her again. Sleep, little one. I'm here. Lyru smiled and closed her eyes, peaceful once more. Zeka whispered, "You didn't correct her." He looked into her eyes, voice steady. "Did you want me to?" Zeka shook her head, eyes shining with emotion. "No," she whispered. "I think she's right." Ethan didn't speak. He simply took her hand and held it, warm and sure. Outside, snow still covered the mountains, but the storm inside their hearts had passed, and in its place, a fire had begun. Not fast, not wild, just steady, gentle, real. Zeka was outside gathering clean snow to melt for water, the cold air biting her cheeks. But something felt wrong. The mountain air, always silent after storms, now held a hum, like footsteps where there should be none. She stood still, ears twitching, heart alert. Then she saw it, small lights moving between the trees in the valley below. Not stars, not creatures, drones. Her blood ran cold. She dropped the snow basket and rushed inside the shelter, sealing the door behind her. "Ethan," she called, her voice shaking, "there's something coming." He was already watching the surveillance screen, eyes narrow, jaw tight. "I see them," he said. "6 figures, 2 drones, armored. They're from your people." Zeka felt her knees weaken. The village council. Lyru peeked from the sleeping area, holding her small toy. "Mama?" Zeka turned quickly, kneeling beside her. "It's okay, love. Stay close to me." Ethan grabbed his coat and weapons belt. What would they want after all this time? Zeka's voice was bitter, low. "They never wanted us before. But now that stories spread." "Stories?" Zeka nodded. "Of the cursed girl who lived through the storm. Of the stranger who fought off raiders. They think Lyru is a blessed child now, a gift from the spirits." Ethan stared at her, then looked toward the snowy window. "So they want her back." Zeka stood, fierce now. They want her to make their name great again, to parade her as a symbol, not because they love her. Ethan's voice was sharp. "Then we don't open the door." But before he could say more, a loud thump echoed through the walls. A voice boomed outside, flat and cold, amplified by drone speakers. "Zeka of the outcast line, come out. The council summons you. The child belongs to the clan by right of blood." Zeka held Lyru close. "They never claimed her before. They left us to die." Ethan moved to the door control but didn't open it. Instead, he activated the voice channel, his tone sharp. "She's not property, she's not a symbol, and she's not going anywhere." There was silence. Then another voice, older, snake-like. "And you, human, are you her protector or her captor?" Ethan replied without pause. "I'm her family." Inside, Lyru looked up, confused but brave. "Mama, do I have to go with them?" Zeka knelt down, her voice shaking. "No, not this time." Then she stood tall, eyes hard. "They think I'm still afraid, still alone." Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder. "But you're not." Another loud knock came, followed by the hiss of melting snow under hot boots, someone trying to breach the outer lock. Zeka turned to Ethan, her voice like fire. "They can try." He smiled, proud. "Now you sound like someone from Earth." Together they moved to the control panel, sealing every door, every vent, powering the defense systems Ethan had rebuilt over weeks. Zeka had spent years running, begging, hiding. But not anymore. Now she was a mother, standing beside a human who had shown her what true strength was, and no one, not even her old blood, would take her child again. The knocking stopped, but the silence was worse. Zeka stood by the window, watching the shapes move in the snow like shadows. 6 armored enforcers from her old village. They were setting up something near the trees. A camp or a trap. "They're waiting for us to panic," Ethan said, adjusting the portable scanner. "They think we'll open the door or try to beg." "They don't know me anymore," Zeka said quietly. "They think I'm still weak." Ethan turned to her with a proud look. "Let's prove them wrong." He pulled up a map of the mountain paths on his screen, showing narrow ice tunnels, dead drop cliffs, and hidden caves he had discovered during his time alone. "There's a way out," he explained, "but we'll need to move fast. They'll follow us once they realize we're not surrendering." Zeka studied the map. Her fingers traced a path near the edge of the cliff range. That crevice. It's known as the Sky Mouth. They won't expect us to go through there. Too dangerous. Ethan smirked. Perfect. Lyru sat in her coat, watching them with wide eyes. Are we running again? She asked softly. Zeka knelt and held her daughter close. No, love. We're leaving, not running. There's a difference. That night they moved fast, quiet, careful. Ethan powered down the main systems to make the cabin look empty, then activated a decoy signal on the opposite slope. It sent out heat signatures and movement readings, just enough to confuse the scouts. Zeka packed light, only food, blankets, and a small carved stone Lyru always carried. They left through the narrow tunnel behind the heater unit, crawling through cold darkness, lit only by Ethan's soft blue light from his wristband. Outside, the mountain greeted them with silence and frost, but no storm this time, just stars. And danger hiding in the trees. They moved quickly over ice ledges, down frozen slopes, through path. It's so narrow Zeka had to carry Lyru against her chest to keep her from falling. Behind them, distant shouts echoed, angry, confused. They found the decoy, Ethan said. It won't fool them for long. But Zeka didn't look back. She was done looking back. When they reached the sky mouth, the wind picked up, howling through the sharp canyon walls. The drop was deep, the ice slippery, and one wrong step meant death. Zeka turned to Ethan. Are you sure? Ethan smiled. I've been in tighter places. They descended slowly, Ethan leading with tools that created grip on the ice, Zeka following close with Lyru in her arms. When they reached the bottom, the air changed, warmer, thinner. Ethan checked the readings. There's a cave system ahead, leads to the next valley, unmapped, safe. Zeka let out a long breath she didn't realize she was holding. Lyru looked up at her with sleepy eyes. Are they gone? Zeka nodded. They'll never find us here. She turned to Ethan. You didn't just save us. You gave us a new path. Ethan adjusted his pack and replied, sometimes the only way forward is through the hardest place. Together, they entered the cave, three shadows disappearing into the unknown, not running anymore, just becoming free. The cave led them far, through tunnels of glowing moss and rivers of melted ice. It was quiet there, warm from deep earth springs, and untouched by hunters or councils. For the first time in her life, Zeka walked without looking over her shoulder, and Lyru. She laughed again, louder this time, echoing through the stone halls like music. Ethan had mapped the valley weeks ago but never settled in it. He hadn't found a reason to stay. Now, he had one. They found a small clearing where the mountains split and the stars above looked so close you could reach out and touch them. There was sunlight during the day, rich soil under the snow, and fresh water nearby. It wasn't just a hiding place. It was a beginning. They built the new shelter together, not just with metal and tools, but with hands, sweat, and laughter. Zeka collected strong vines and wood from the deep forest. Ethan built walls from old ship parts and earth alloy panels. Lyru painted the inside with finger drawings of stars and smiling faces. At night, they sat outside by the fire, wrapped in blankets, eating root stew and telling stories. Ethan told them about Earth, about trees with red leaves, oceans so big you couldn't see the other side, and cities that touched the clouds. Zeka told him about the old songs of her people. Before fear, before superstition, songs of the sky spirits, and love that lasted through the storms. One night, while Lyru was asleep, Zeka stared at the stars and asked, "Do you think they're still looking for us?" Ethan shook his head. "They'll stop. The cold always forgets who it froze." Zeka looked at him, then asked quietly, "Do you ever miss being alone?" Ethan smiled gently. "Not for a second." She moved closer, wrapping her hand around his. "Neither do I." Weeks passed, and the valley slowly became home. Zeka learned to use earth tools, laughing when they made funny sounds or sparks. Ethan learned to cook her people's food, terribly at first, until Lyru declared his burnt roots brave and crunchy. They planted together. They read old earth books to Lyru. They woke up together, ate together, built a life together. One morning, while folding blankets near the fire pit, Lyru looked up and said, "Mama, Papa, can we stay here forever?" Zeka and Ethan looked at each other. He smiled, then knelt beside her and said, "Forever sounds perfect." And for once, the word didn't feel scary. It felt real. That night, Zeka stepped outside alone for a moment, wrapped in a thick fur cloak. She looked at the stars, tears in her eyes, but not from pain, from peace. She had been called cursed, useless, unwanted. She had been left in the snow to die with her child. But now, she had warmth, food, laughter, and love. Not given by blood, not forced by rules, earned. She heard Ethan's voice behind her, soft and full of care. "You okay?" She turned and nodded, smiling through tears. "Better than I've ever been." He held out his hand. "Come back in. Lyru wants one more story." Zeka took his hand and walked back into the light, and behind them, the stars kept shining.